serene tranquility of the Mushroom Island, the mycelium thrived, sprawling across the landscape, while mushrooms reached unprecedented sizes, casting an otherworldly glow in the moonlight, and the contented mushrooms grazed happily on the land. All was good, as the island was a paradise untouched by the chaos of the outside world. And yet, on one fateful rainy night, a mysterious boat would materialize on the shores of that island, and everything would change. This boat's origins were shrouded in mystery, and the vessel bore an ominous cargo, a malevolent, pulsing red crystal of unknown origin. But very luckily, the boat's arrival seemed to go unnoticed, as if the island itself was in blissful ignorance. And so, the mushrooms continued with their blissful existence, oblivious to the foreign presence that had invaded their sanctuary. And life on that island unfolded as it always had, with the mycelium spreading its network and the mushrooms flourishing. But little did the inhabitants of the Mushroom Island understand their world was on the edge of a haunting transformation that would shatter the tranquility that they had enjoyed for so long. As when the clock struck midnight, exactly 1 week later, the red crystal, once dormant, burst into an intense and blinding glow, a pulsating energy emanating from it, creating a deafening buzz that echoed across the previously serene island. The mushrooms, startled from their peaceful grazing, turned towards the source of this newfound radiance and unfamiliar sounds. Confusion painted their faces as they cautiously approached the demonic glow, an instinct to defend their homes sparking within them. But still, they were drawn closer to the radiant spectacle, unable to resist the magnetic pull of the mysterious crystal. In their bewilderment, they gathered around that crystal, their wide eyes reflecting the brilliance before them. And then, as if driven by some unknown force, one brave mushroom reached out and touched the pulsing red crystal. In an instant, his entire form was enveloped in a dazzling dark blue hue, and with an otherworldly grace, he soared into the night sky. The remaining mushrooms, unable to comprehend the unsurreal event, hesitated for a moment before another dared to touch that crystal. Like its predecessor, this mushroom ascended into the heavens, leaving the others in a state of confusion and perplexity. And so, the cycle continued, one by one, until all the mushrooms had pressed against the demonic crystal. And so, very soon, the entire herd floated high above the Mushroom Island, their eyes glowing with a mysterious dark blue radiance. And in this surreal aerial display, an unexpected transformation unfolded. The once simple mushrooms, mere creatures of instinct, became beings of intellect. The dark blue hue that had enveloped them seemed to carry with it a profound understanding. No longer confined to the limitations of their simplistic nature, the mushrooms, now sentient and enlightened, began to grasp the intricacies of trade, society, architecture, the subscribe button, and the mysteries of the cosmos. They understood everything. But then, that strange buzzing sound stopped. And so, with their newfound knowledge and luminous blue eyes, the mushrooms descended gracefully back to the island surface. A palpable air of change lingered as the creatures, once mere grazers, now bore the weight of enlightenment. And so, over the next 5 years, everything was going to change on that island, as the landscape was transformed by the mushrooms. As guided by their intelligence, they initiated the construction of a town, and they built water systems that flowed through the once quiet island, which allowed them to maintain flourishing farms that echoed the vitality of their newfound society and keep everything pristine and clean. Also, a sophisticated system of trade quickly emerged, and the mushrooms, now donned in purple suits, stood as symbols of a complex civilization that had risen from the simplicity of their past. But their ambitions soared far beyond the confines of that island, as they were beginning to reach for the stars. Plans were laid, dreams were forged, and the mushrooms envisioned a future that transcended the earthly bounds that they currently understood. Life was grand, a harmonious blend of tradition and progress gripped that island. And so, to commemorate all their grand achievements, the mushrooms decided to move the pulsing red crystal that started this great change into the heart of their thriving civilization. All seemed well in that utopia until at midnight, once again, with a sudden and blinding flash of light, the crystal unleashed an ominous glow that engulfed the island, and the buzzing sound returned. The brilliance suffocated the once joyful mushrooms as panic spread through their enlightened minds, as the radiant light threatened to kill out the very essence of their newfound intelligence, because that red crystal seemed to be demonic. The air cracked with an unsettling energy, and an impending sense of doom hung heavily over that island. Something sinister was unfolding. A malevolent force had seized control of that crystal, casting an eerie shadow across the idyllic existence that the mushrooms had so meticulously crafted. Meanwhile, in a coastal village over 10,000 blocks away, while the villagers were just living a normal life, they were suddenly captivated by a distant flash of red light. Their curiosity piqued, and so the villagers, armed with advanced navigation technology, meticulously calculated the location of the origin of that mysterious glow. And well, they uncovered that the glow originated from a land far, far away. But undeterred by the vastness of the ocean and the danger of the upcoming quest, 4 intrepid villagers set forth on a journey across the expansive waters to uncover the origin of the enigmatic light. Now, this journey was not easy, as they had to set sail through storms and tsunamis and hordes of drowns that threatened to steal their life forces. But still, they pressed on with a relentless determination, and after weeks of non-stop rowing, the determined villagers finally reached their destination and beheld the sight of the Mushroom Island. Its alien landscape left them in awe and confusion, a stark contrast to the familiar terrain they had navigated before. Docking their boats, the villagers set foot onto the Mushroom Island and they began their exploration. And they were amazed with what they saw, as they were mesmerized by this new dirt variation and by the massive mushrooms. But still, they pressed on even further, knowing this strange light source originated a few hundred blocks inland. And so they kept on moving across that strange land until they saw it. The remnants of a once thriving civilization stood before them. It was now abandoned and in ruins. The dilapidated structures whispered tales of a bygone era, and the villagers, perplexed, sought answers amid the eerie silence. However, their search for understanding what happened there took an unexpected turn when a low buzz reverberated through the air. Startled, the villagers began to search that abandoned town, trying to find the source of that humming, thinking that it too must be the source of that strange light. And they looked around for a few minutes before their attention shifted to a mysterious set of stairs that had just materialized before them. These stairs seemed to defy the very laws of reality, leading upwards into an unseen realm at an angle that just didn't seem possible. Curiosity overcoming them, the villagers ran onto the otherworldly staircase and began to ascend to the heavens. With each step, the air grew charged with an energy that hinted at the profound mysteries awaiting them. The once abandoned island now held secrets that transcended the limits of their understanding. And as the villagers climbed higher, the buzz intensified and the air cracked with an otherworldly force. But still, the villagers pressed on, determined to uncover the secrets that awaited them at the top of this celestial staircase. But their journey was fraught with fatigue, as one by one the brave adventurers succumbed to exhaustion, their weary bodies unable to carry them any further. But there was one villager who never gave up, even when his body begged him to stop. And so, undeterred, the solitary villager forged ahead, climbing into the unknown with a relentless spirit. And finally, after a few more hours of strenuous, hard work, he did it. But when he reached the summit, he was met with a sight both celestial and chilling, because before him stood a mushroom unlike any other that he had encountered. Its eyes emitted a haunting dark blue glow, giving it an almost angelic appearance. Yet an unsettling aura surrounded that creature, amplified by a ruined suit and deep, mournful moos that seemed to echo across the sky. Driven by a mix of curiosity and fear, the lone villager approached the mysterious moose room as his trembling hand extended to touch that creature. A malevolent energy surged through the air, and in an instant, all the other villagers who had accompanied him on this perilous journey collapsed, their life forces extinguished. A profound darkness descended upon the world, swallowing everything in its path. The lone villager now stood alone in the abyss, surrounded only by the eerie blue glow emanating from the once angelic mushroom. The world seemed to shudder with an ominous energy, and the villager, now isolated and surrounded by the echoes of his companion's demise, grappled with the weight of the choices that had led him to this depressing moment. The air hung heavy with an unspoken truth as the lone survivor found himself in a realm where light and shadow danced in an eternal struggle. Something very strange was happening on that island, and that survivor desperately wanted to flee from it. He didn't care the source of that light, he just wanted to get away, but he couldn't. And so, as the lone survivor stood there in that eerie glow, hundreds of blue-eyed mushrooms materialized, seemingly out of thin air. Their presence was otherworldly, and they exuded an air of both intelligence and majesty that surpassed anything else that villager had ever encountered. Yet, beneath their calm demeanor, he sensed an undercurrent of profound pain and suffering. Driven by empathy, the villager approached one of those majestic creatures, intent on offering comfort and solace. However, as his hand extended towards that creature, the entire assembly of mushrooms vanished into thin air, leaving the lone villager bewildered and confused. In the wake of their disappearance, a thunderous crash echoed through that void, resonating with a cosmic force. Before the lone villager, a new set of stairs had just materialized, this time descending into the unknown depths of the earth. It was an invitation, or perhaps a mandate, urging him to venture into the hidden realms beneath the surface. With a mixture of curiosity and determination, the villager descended the newly formed stairs, knowing that this could be his only shot to free himself from this haunted island. Each step took him deeper into a mysterious abyss, where the air was heavy with secrets, and the very ground seemed to pulse with an enigmatic energy. The blue glow that illuminated the world above now transformed into an ominous radiance, guiding the villager into the subterranean where mysteries awaited him. But as he descended, the floor became charged with a palpable tension, and the walls of that cavern seemed to pulse with life. And the villager couldn't shake the feeling that he was merely on the cusp of an ancient revelation. The echoes of the crashing sound that had signaled the appearance of the stairs reverberated in that abyss, a haunting melody accompanying his descent into the heart of the unknown. The descent down those stairs plunged the lone villager into an inky darkness. Faint glimmers of mushrooms dotted the surroundings, and the distant sounds of flowing water echoed through the abyss. A pervasive sense of wrongness hung in the air, a sinister undertone that clung to the very walls of that subterranean passage. But thankfully, due to the dimly lit candles placed sporadically on the floor, that villager could see where he was walking. And so, despite the inner ease that seemed to pierce through his heart, that villager pressed onwards, propelled by an indescribable force that seemed to guide him further into that abyss. But as he descended, the surroundings grew more ominous, and the darkness deepened with every step. The oppressive atmosphere closed in all around him, a malevolent force seemingly lurking in the shadows. The journey felt surreal, an odyssey through a nightmarish realm. Yet, that villager was already committed to the path that he had chosen, and so he continued to descend into the darkness, until finally, after several hours, the staircase had led him into a small stone room. Maybe this was it. This was his freedom. However, the air within was cold, and an aura of malevolence pervaded every corner. And there seemed to be no other pathways besides the stairs that he had taken, which, by this time, had been suddenly blocked off. And so, he was trapped there. However, amid the pervasive darkness, a glimmer of hope presented itself. A fountain at the back half of that room, bathed in a divine glow. It radiated a godly energy that seemed to defy the sinister ambience surrounding it. Approaching the fountain with caution, the villager felt a mixture of fear and awe. The divine aura of that fountain clashed with the malevolence that permeated the room, creating an uneasy tension. But as he drew nearer, a sudden revelation struck him. The source of that godly glow was not just a fountain, as there, floating just above it, was another mushroom. The sight of that mushroom, suspended in the divine radiance, had a calming effect on that villager. It was as if this creature, with its eerie, comforting presence, offered a glimmer of solace in the midst of the surrounding darkness. And so, despite the palpable fear that lingered within the air, that villager found an unexpected sense of reassurance in the gentle glow of the divine fountain and the enigmatic mushroom. And soon, that villager found himself drawn towards that mushroom, a force beyond his control, compelling him to approach. Despite his feeble attempts to resist this, the pull was overwhelming, and he succumbed to the strange allure. But as he moved closer, the mushroom leaped gracefully from its pedestal, landing in the villager's arms. In that instant of contact, a surge of enlightenment flooded the villager's mind. A torrent of visions cascaded through his consciousness. Images of that red crystal, the mushrooms' former existence, the genesis of their civilization, their thriving days, the amazing subscribe button that they had always pressed, and the mysterious glow that had cursed them to become the haunting island that they were today. It was as if he had just experienced 5 years of life compressed into a mere 30 seconds, as he now understood the full story of the mushrooms, their great rise and fall. But abruptly, when that villager blinked, he found himself back on the surface of that haunting island. An unsettling aura permeated the air, and a sense of unease settled over him as he began to explore his surroundings. A sudden horde of mushrooms descended from the sky, their forms materializing out of thin air. The once peaceful island was now overrun with mushrooms, creating a surreal and chaotic scene. But despite the evil aura that seemed to pulse from those creatures, the villager, once again, could still sense a feeling of immense pain and suffering. And so, determined to help these creatures he sensed were in distress, that villager sprinted towards them. However, before he could reach them, time itself came to a screeching halt. A frozen curse surrounded that villager and engulfed everything else. The mushrooms now suspended mid-air, their expressions a mosaic of fear and confusion. The world had halted, trapped in a moment of eerie stillness. The villager stood alone, caught in a temporal stasis, confronted with the enigma of the frozen scene before him. It was as if the very fabric of reality had been temporarily rewoven, leaving him to contemplate the consequences of this newfound understanding and the peculiar circumstances that had unfolded on the island. As, at that moment, the red crystal soared into the sky and positioned itself in the center of the mushrooms, causing an anguished chorus of cries to erupt. The once peaceful creatures now writhed in pain, their pure essence clashing against the malevolence emanating from that crystal. The villager, trapped in place, felt an overwhelming urge to save them, and so he struggled against the invisible binds that held him, desperate to break free and intervene. The crystal, an embodiment of evil itself, hovered menacingly over the distressed mushrooms. A few agonizing seconds passed by, and then, as abruptly as time had frozen, the villager was released. Yet, in that brief moment, the crystal had vanished, leaving a wake of torment in its absence. The mushrooms, still caught in the throes of pain, continued to cry out, their anguish echoing through the air. With a sense of urgency, the freed villager moved among the mushrooms, attempting to soothe their distress. But every attempt proved futile. The creatures remained trapped in a state of fear and panic. The villager, racked with a sense of helplessness, pondered his next move, desperately seeking a solution to alleviate the suffering that clung to the air like a malevolent spectre. But then he sensed it, the lingering aura of that invisible crystal, quickly realizing that it hadn't vanished, but instead it was merely concealed from sight. And so he swiftly gathered some mycelium and constructed a makeshift path towards the last known location of that malevolent object. And with a leap, he ascended to where the crystal had hovered just moments ago. It reappeared, but as he touched it, a surge of corrupting energy coursed through him, revealing grim visions of his impending demise. He was going to die very soon. The villager saw the painful inevitability of his fate, an inescapable tragedy that awaited him in just a few weeks. However, with the ominous tapestry of this vision, he glimpsed two alternate futures. In one, he moved the crystal away, ensuring the prosperity of the mushrooms. But it came at the cost of a far more agonizing and lengthy demise. In the other, he allowed the crystal to remain, bringing suffering eventually to the entire world. Yet, doing nothing would grant him with a peaceful passing. But despite the foreboding shadows that loomed over his destiny, that villager understood what needed to be done. And so he summoned every ounce of strength within him, and with a resolute will, he pushed the invisible crystal onto the boats that they had used to reach that island. And then he began to row away as quickly as his arms would allow him to. Sailing away from the cursed shores, the lone villager bore the weight of his sacrifice. He knew that he had chosen the path of suffering, yet with an unwavering resolve, he sought to save the mushrooms and the entire world from the malevolent influence that clung to that crystal. And as the boats drifted into the horizon, the lone villager, battered by the cruel forces he had unleashed upon himself, clung to the hope that his sacrifice would bring salvation to the mushrooms and prevent the impending cataclysm that loomed over the entire world. Even in the face of his own agonizing demise, he sailed on, a beacon of selfless courage in a sea of impending darkness. As the lone villager sailed through the endless expanse of the ocean, the crystal continued to tighten its grip upon him. Its insidious influence whispered malevolent secrets into his mind, planting the seeds of darkness that grew with each passing day. His once vibrant eyes dulled to a haunting shade of red, mirroring the malevolence of that crystal. Every heartbeat echoed with the ominous rhythm of his impending demise. Shadows danced in the periphery of his vision, and a chilling aura enveloped him as the crystal's corruption seeped through his very soul. Yet, undeterred by the torment inflicted upon him, that villager pressed on. Days turned into night, and the boat became both his vessel and his prison. The haunting whispers of that crystal became an unending symphony that echoed in his mind. Each word a reminder of the pain he willingly endured to save those mushrooms and save the world. After sailing for what felt like an eternity, he finally landed on the unforgiving coast of a desolate desert. Stepping onto the arid sand, he hauled that cursed crystal with him, its influence etching further into his very being. The once pure villager, now marked by the malevolence of that crystal, walked on through the barren wasteland. Days stretched into a seemingly endless expanse as he strode through the merciless desert. His body, frail and emaciated, bore the scars of the relentless torment. Finally, in a secluded spot, he began to dig with his bare, trembling hands. The sand yielded to his desperate efforts as he created a pit, a burial ground for the harbinger of suffering. With agonizing determination, he tossed the red crystal into that pit, the sinister glow casting haunting shadows across sunken face. And then he covered it, layer upon layer of sand, sealing away the malevolence that had plagued the mushrooms and himself. As the last grain of sand settled over that pit, the lone villager, consumed by the crystal's relentless corruption, collapsed to the unforgiving ground. Alone in the vast desert, the once heroic villager succumbed to a brutal and agonizing death, the wind carrying away his final cries, leaving behind only the echoes of his sacrifice, etched into the desolation of the desert. A testament to the price paid for the salvation of others. But this story doesn't end just yet. And so, you'll need to watch this video to learn what happened next.